guys, welcome back. I'm Isabella and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. This is a video for the release week of A Strangled Heart. So welcome, and also happy release week to this amazing book that I literally did not expect to write. But today we're going to be talking about my writing journey, why I started writing, and why I personally love writing as my chosen art form. Before we continue, I do want to mention that there is construction going on outside, so I apologize for any random background noises and any angry dogs. I started writing when I was 11 years old, and I do realize that for a lot of authors that's kind of a lot older than most of them when they do start writing. But personally, I was like very business minded, very business oriented as a child, and I always knew that I wanted to run my own business. Now, which kind of business? This does not really have a concrete answer. I went from beauty businesses to hospitality businesses, then I went through a fashion retail phase. There were many businesses that I wouldn't have minded, running or like owning myself. But the thing is, none of these really stuck for a long time. That was until I turned 11. Okay, well, I didn't turn 11. I was 11 for like 3 months already. So I was 11 years old. It was like the start of grade 6, I believe. And that was when I decided I want to start writing a book. And I did not really start writing poetry, I'll be honest. I actually hated poetry back in primary. I loathed anytime we had to do it, anytime we had to study it, because I was taught a very specific way of poetry, and that is it has to follow the rhyme scheme of A-B-A-B, and I absolutely hated rhyming things, and I always found it so difficult to make the lines sound nice while rhyming. So that already put me off to a really bad start. But of course, once I got to high school, we were taught different forms of poetry, such as free verse, which is what I do mostly, but also other types of poetry like monostitches, limericks, etc. So I think we can definitely leave the high school part to another time. But for now, let's talk about what actually got me into writing. So I started off writing mystery fiction novels, and I think I was a bit adventurous when I decided to do this, because I had only ever read or basically listened to one mystery book, because most of the mystery books never really intrigued me. I was a very big fantasy, magical realism reader when I was younger, so honestly I kind of found it funny that those weren't really the first genres I gravitated towards now. But I mean, it's not that far off from what I do currently write, which is poetry and romance, but I do dabble in like dystopian fantasy every now and then. So who knows, maybe one day I will write a fantasy. But I started writing this mystery novel, not thinking much of it, having fun, enjoying it, and then I got to like chapter 13 or something, and I had the biggest mental block ever, because I realized the mysteries my character had to solve were really dumb. But also, I kept forgetting that she's 5 years old, and I thought that she was like 12, 11 or something, around the same age I was. So I realized that there was some issues here, and then I didn't know how to fix them because I didn't want to make her older. And also, I was writing beyond something I had an experience of. So I felt very underdeveloped as a writer, and I decided to put that book on hold. And by put on hold, I mean I don't even know where that book is. It's like somewhere probably on my iPad still, but like I have not found that file in years, so it's basically gone. If I do find it one day, it'll be kind of funny to like read it again. But I did most of my writing in like an exercise book, so like a notebook, something like this but a bit bigger, and I don't know where that book is. I think I trashed it, so that book is basically gone. Fast forward to high school, I did not actually really do much poetry writing, except for like assessments, of course. So most of my writing at the time was still novels, but I had moved away from novels to more like YA or middle grade kind of books, and these ranged in various topics. There were not really any romance aspects in general. There wasn't a lot. It was really contemporary based. But that was really it, and I realized I did enjoy it, but I don't know why, because I still thought I could write mystery. So I tried again with a magical realism aspect this time. And also, once again, I wrote this book in a notebook, and I have misplaced that notebook, probably for the best of everyone. So don't ask me what that notebook is. All I remember is I thought it would be such a cool idea, and such a good idea to call it Mystery of the Mermaids. Wow, very creative for a 13-year-old. 12-year-old or 13-year-old Isabella really thought that she could write mystery. She was going to be proven so wrong really quickly. In the beginning of year 8, I wasn't 14 yet, so I started brainstorming this new idea, and this is when I started to actually enter the genre I do write in, and that was YA romance. So I have since kind of grown out of this genre, but like, let's just stick to the timeline. So 13-year-old Isabella started writing this book in July of 2019. She really enjoyed the idea, she had a lot of fun with it, and she decided that this was going to be the first book she published. No, it was not. It was so bad. I have actually since gone back to read it, and I laugh so much. Like, it is so cringy, and also it's like, let me retell you my entire life story, but like in the form of 2 characters you don't even know. These characters were super underdeveloped, there was no plot, and the characters, they literally felt like they were characters. They did not feel like people. And honestly, I'm so proud of her for even completing the book, but I never really want to go back to see that book or revise it, because it sounds like a monstrous task that I'm not ready to partake in. At the time of 2019, my high school also created this Writers Guild program where a lot of writers and artists, they gathered together and they basically got to participate in these like writing activities or meetings, and we kind of got to share our work. It wasn't the worst experience I've had. It was really fun, and it was really cool meeting like kids from other grades as well, but it was definitely a very competitive kind of group at the time. I did leave the group when I got to year 9 because it just didn't feel the same. It was no longer the same vibes. It kind of changed quite dramatically, and the meetings were no longer what they used to be. Like, end of year 8 is when I started writing poetry, and this is when I first created my first website. I don't know if you can call it a website. I think we're going to call it a blog. So I used a WordPress website builder thingy, and basically I started my own portfolio with all my writing, and the only writing I did at the time was poetry. My English teacher, she loves my writing, but she also was like, I think you should continue writing fiction because it was something you need to like practice for your HSC, but also your fiction was really good. But I can see why your poetry is a lot stronger in your eyes. And that was true. Poetry I did find a lot easier to weave in figurative techniques, make it a lot more concise, and just really understand how to experiment better when it comes to show don't tell. But of course, being my English teacher, she supported me regardless. Throughout high school, I kind of just worked on this little blog website I created, and then I think it was in year 11 we took a different turn. Grade 11 was the start of senior year for me, and also I got really sick before the school year began. So at the end of 2021, I was super sick and I basically couldn't do anything, and I started writing fiction all over again. So I started with this book that I didn't mind writing. I called it Project Nightmare. I have a Spotify playlist and everything for it, but I just never continued working on it. I literally just started planning it and it was never touched again. So basically that book is on the back burner indefinitely. And then I also started writing this new book when I started to feel better, which was at the beginning of 2022. And yes, I should have been preparing for senior year. Probably should have also gotten my books and everything else, but I did not feel like doing any of that stuff. So what did I decide to do? I decided to plan a book, outline it all, and start writing it. And I did. So in 2022, Project Belonging was born, and that was a YA contemporary romance. And that was when I started to realize that this is the genre I really like writing, but also I don't mind kind of experimenting with other genres, but this was going to be like my main genre. I think it was in grade 12, July 2023, was when I started writing a poetry collection. And at this time, I had never written a poetry collection. Okay, we're not counting my major work that I had to do for extension to English, but alone, I had never written a poetry collection. Yes, I've written like, you know, poetry that has like series or like a serial format, but a whole poetry collection like this, I had never done before. And I was scared. I was literally intimidated. But one lesson, my teacher was at a conference and we were under minimal supervision, which is basically like a teacher just comes in to your classroom, marks the roll, checks on you every now and then. And that was it. And they kind of just let you do your own thing. I finished the classwork really quickly because all we had to do was write this informative text, and it wasn't really hard. Like, you wrote it on a topic you wanted and it was only 500 words. So I quickly did that. It was on, I chose to do social media because at the time I was like experimenting with a lot of social media marketing, so it just felt like the easiest thing to talk about for 500 words too. So after I did that, I decided to start planning everything I couldn't say. So I started planning this book, and then I spent 5 months. So from July to December 2023, I worked on that book tirelessly. Okay, maybe not tirelessly because I did have my HSC and exams and other stuff in between, but you get my point. I worked on that book pretty religiously, and it became my focus and passion project, and that was when I realized that I know what I want to do for my business, and I knew what my business plan was going to be. So as a student who was obviously studying business and economics, and also someone who grew up very business oriented, I knew what business I wanted to do. It was the longest passion I'd stuck with, but also I finally understood what my purpose was and also what my calling was when it came to the business side of things. So once I set up all my business stuff, did all the registration and very boring stuff that we do not need to really talk about, I started getting ready for my book release. Now, since I was 17 at the time, I technically couldn't do anything, so I had to wait till I turned 18. And that way was both painful, but also like a race against the clock. Like, I just wanted to get everything done, and I kept battling between what release date I wanted for my first book. At the start of February was when I started writing this book. Now, obviously, I did not write this book from the time I got the inspiration because I didn't think much of it. But that is basically where we're up to. So we're now in 2024, and it was like probably the most interesting writing process I've ever had for this book, or any of my books in general. So let's talk about that. What I've basically learned about my writing process is that it's very different for each book, and I can't really rely on the same process for every single book. And yes, I still try to write fiction every now and then. I'm still working on my novels, but for my business plan, I'm not so sure if you would have watched the video, but I did a 2024 goals video, which I will link. But basically in that video, I talked about my business plans and how I plan to publish 15 poetry books in the first 3 years before I even think about publishing any of my fiction books. Now, is this maybe a little bit intense or insane? Yes, but also the only reason I really want to try and publish that many books is because I want to build a backlist, and because poetry is super short, it seemed pretty doable. And yes, it is a lot of work, and yes, I am going to be in uni full-time doing this, and maybe I did bite off more than I can chew, but we will see. Basically my writing journey and where we are at now in, I forgot the month, June 2024, and we are basically preparing for this book release. And we are in the middle of release week. I don't know what I'm saying. I have lost track of every single day recently since I've been on break from uni, and I don't know if I like that or hate that. So basically that's my writing journey. It definitely is not what I expected, but I'm so glad that I found writing as my passion and true calling, and I really enjoyed it. So let's talk about why I love writing, even though I think it's kind of obvious, and why I decided to start writing now. The reason why I started writing was, apart from being really inspired by that mystery book I was like listening to, it's also because I really just wanted to experiment in regards to art forms. At the time, back in primary school when I did begin writing, I hated poetry. Didn't really like English either. I was actually more of a sporty athletic girl rather than a academic oriented kind of student. So let's just say I did not love English that much, but I did love reading. That was one thing that always stuck with me, and I didn't realize that my love for reading was also going to translate into a love for writing. So basically, I started writing because I want to experiment and I want to explore other art forms. At the time, I was very athletic, but also artistic, more so in the drawing, painting kind of sense. So I did a lot of those kind of things. I did a lot of photography at the time as well. And then I realized that I wasn't getting a lot out of just doing that. I wanted something more. And I didn't realize that something more was going to be writing. So that definitely took me by surprise when I started writing that mystery novel that I don't know if I ever want to see again. I kind of realized I really enjoyed it and it was really fun. I didn't actually tell anyone about it. I think the only person who knew about it was my Spanish teacher at the time, and she's been literally with me on this entire journey, thick and thin. So I literally love her for that. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey in the sense of things, but I didn't realize that writing was the one thing I needed. It was the one thing I couldn't do that well, but it was the one thing I needed to get over my creative issue, which was that I want to express something more rather than just through the forms of like painting, drawing, or photography. So there is nothing wrong with those art forms. I still love those art forms in general. I just realized that at the time it wasn't what I wanted or what I needed creatively. So when I started writing, it felt like everything just fit into place, and that final missing piece I finally found. And that was kind of when I knew that I wanted to do writing. Maybe not for the rest of my life at the time, but I knew it was something I wanted to do. And I didn't know how it was going to fit into my life. I didn't know where it was going to take me. I didn't know any of these things. I just wanted to write because I needed to write. I feel like that was so generic. I don't know. I just feel like I've heard so many people say it, and now that I'm saying it out loud, it feels kind of like the same thing. But creatively, I needed to write in order to inspire more creativity and also help push those creative ambitions that I had. So that kind of explains why I started writing, and also why I love writing is just the freedom, but also the way you can like just experiment with words, especially like those kind of flash fiction stories where you have to write stories in like 25 words or less. Those are really cool to me, and it's really interesting, and I now use that kind of technique to teach my students for English, and it just feels like it's come full circle. Like, I love writing. My mission when I created my business was to inspire people to follow their creative dreams, whatever that may be. Of course, I'm going to focus more on the publishing side of things, but I just want to inspire people to follow their creative ambitions, even though people tell them that it's a waste of time, worthless, or just something they should stop doing, because it's not worth anything when really it is. And if it makes you happy, you should just do it. Even if the consequences of people telling you it's the worst thing ever, it's completely fine, because if you enjoy it, there's nothing else that's more important. So that was basically my mission for starting my business and why I wanted to do it. And also it reminds me of my love for writing every day, because whenever I'm having a really tough day when it comes to writing or editing or anything to do with my business, I'm reminded of my mission statement and why I chose to do this and why I'm doing this, because of what I want to achieve. I can't wait to bring you along for the rest of this journey. But yeah, now that you're basically caught up on my life story when it comes to writing, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to check out A Strangled Heart, it is basically published on all retailers. The only thing that it won't come out as is a Kindle Amazon ebook, because there were some formatting issues when I tried to create one, and it was giving me so much grief that I just decided that this is not going to have a Kindle book. So I'm so sorry for anyone who prefers to read on their Kindle, but thank you so much for watching this video and tuning in. Happy release week, and I'll see you with another video. Bye!